Hey everybody and welcome back to Tech Bench. In the last video I showed you me putting together my new awesome rig, a 9950 X3D paired up with a 5090 Founders Edition. Now I did mention that I'm going to be getting on to things like overclocking, but before I do that I wanted to share with you the first 5 things that I do whenever I get a new PC. And it's important that you do these things because you don't want to jump ahead straight into things like overclocking, things that are going to test the stability of your system to the max without making sure that it's as stable as possible beforehand. So let's dive straight into it, no messing about. Number 1 is the BIOS. Now the BIOS is basically the interface between the hardware and the actual software, and the reason you want that up to date is many-fold. Firstly, simply for compatibility. You might have, say, a new AMD Ryzen CPU and an older motherboard, and in order for it to support that new CPU, you have to upgrade the BIOS. It also is a good idea to update the BIOS because it usually comes with things like stability and performance enhancements, things also like supporting new RAM. Now there is one important thing to check. I would always go to the manufacturer's website, check out the latest version, and then cross-reference it with sort of hardware forums, the manufacturer's forums, things like Reddit, etc. Because sometimes there can be downsides, sometimes there can be compatibility issues, especially if you're on, say, a bleeding edge version where there hasn't been that much testing done. There can also be some performance hits with updating your BIOS. In the past, things like Spectre, Meltdown, these CPU speculative attacks, the BIOS updates actually fix that, but they do reduce performance in certain workloads, so do bear that in mind. Generally, I like to lean on the side of doing the updates because security is important, right? But at the same time, if you're understanding the risk, you might want to retain some of that performance. Some of them are more proof of concept than actually going to impact you in a home environment. Once you've decided whether you're going to update your BIOS or not, the next thing I recommend is the drivers. So you've installed your operating system. Let's say for this video, most of you are probably going to be installing Windows for this, especially if it's going to be sort of a high-end gaming PC, albeit you definitely should check out Linux, and I've got videos on my other channel about that. Now the reason you want to install drivers, again, similar to the BIOS, it's going to give you the latest support and hopefully the latest bug fixes, best performance. But again, I would recommend just checking the versions and compatibility. Normally you would go to somewhere like your motherboard's manufacturer for most of your drivers. These will be things like chipsets, etc. But I actually recommend just cross-referencing that for a moment. So have a look on the manufacturer's website. So for example, my machine, it's an Asus X870E creators board, but actually I know on there that there's non-Asus parts. So for things like the network adapter, I will actually go to the network adapter's website. In this term, it's a Quansha, and I will check the version that they've got. It's possible that the motherboard manufacturer's website isn't up to date with the latest drivers, and that can cause problems further on down the line, especially with Windows updates, etc., 24H2 being a big one. And especially if you're going to be going down the route of doing overclocking and benchmarking performance things, you want to make sure that your system is as stable as possible and has all of the latest support and upgrades. Third is to pull down the updates for your OS. Let's assume it's Windows here. So pulling down those updates is not only good for security reasons, but it's also good for potentially performance and compatibility. If you're pulling down things like the latest drivers, latest games, benchmarking tools, etc., it's probable that those were best tested on the latest OS updates. And that's another reason why I recommend upgrading, especially again, if you're going to be doing some overclocking, etc., you're going to be forced to update in the future anyway, so it makes sense to be on the latest and greatest. Number 4 is quite a simple one. I recommend you change the power settings on your device, or at least have a look at them, especially if you're wanting a powerful gaming rig. You definitely want to put it into the power mode, not the power saving mode, because that can do things like underclock if it goes into sort of the power saving C states, and it can also be just a bit of a nightmare with turning off your monitor, putting the device to sleep, etc. Generally recommended to keep it on high performance mode. Lastly, and probably most importantly, is to do some benchmarking before you get on to the next step, which would be maybe you want to overclock this device. You've updated everything you can. Now you want to actually do some benchmarks for system stability. So just the fact that the OS is booting and you're able to load some applications, etc., doesn't mean that long term you have stability, and it's a good idea to rule out that you've got any faulty parts. So I recommend downloading any of the benchmarking tools I'm displaying on screen and running those for a long period of time, at least a few hours, just to make sure that everything is stable. There are also some applications you might want to run outside of the operating system, especially when it comes to testing things like RAM or disks, for example, because those will take out of the equation the operating system itself. Now for me, having done all of those and tested it, I'm happy with the setup I've got. So in the next video, I'm going to start the overclocking process. I've been using this device now for a few weeks. Everything seems to be fine, but I know that I've got a ton of headroom to play with, especially on the GPU and hopefully a little bit more as well on the CPU. My RAM's pretty dialed in at the moment using Expo 2, but we've also got XMP on the Intel side, the same thing, just a different nomenclature, and we'll be touching on that in the next video. So let me know what you think of my tips and whether you agree with them. Also, is there anything I've missed out, because it'd be cool to know if there's something daft that I'm not doing. Anyway, thanks for watching everybody. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.